Hi, everybody. This is Crap Fun Book Reviews. We have another book review. It's going to be Stephen King's Fairy Tale. We have a special guest with us today, our friend Mike. Say hi to everybody, Mike.
Hello.
And of course, it's me, Heather, and Daniel. And yeah,
Hey
we're going to
guys.
go ahead. All right. So we'll go ahead and give us just a really quick synopsis. So the book is essentially about a young boy named Charlie Reed. I believe he's either like 17, right? I think he's 17 when we start the
17,
book.
yes. Yes.
So he's just your regular high school kid, and he ends up meeting a man named Howard Bowditch, who's a recluse that lives at the big house at the top of a big hill, and he has a dog named Radar. And essentially, we just follow Charlie on his adventure after meeting Howard Bowditch. Um, I first wanted to talk about overall just a simple rating, how like 1 star to 5 stars. You don't have to go super into detail, just let me know what you give it and just your overall feelings towards the books. You want to go ahead and first, Daniel?
Sure, I'm giving it 4 stars. It has an amazing first half, a weaker second half, and but at the end of the day, Stephen King is king. That even a mediocre book from him is still 30 times better than any trivial book we get out there. So,
What about
and
you, Mike? How do you feel?
I agree with Danny and I also give it 4 stars. Um, I love the setup at the beginning, amazing. You're engaged from the beginning. It has this story that hooks you in right from the first page. And then it's still good for me, but it kind of follows a little bit of the fantasy tropes towards the middle, a little bit. But by the end, he still knocks it out of the park. Stephen King still makes an entertaining read in the fantasy realm. And, I really enjoyed it and is very emotional all throughout. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with that one. So I give it a 4 too. I actually like the beginning and the end. I did falter around the middle. I think we can all kind of agree with that one that the middle was
yeah.
a little slow maybe or just kind of off, but I did end up enjoying the ending once we finally got through some places. But yeah, I also give it a 4. And yes, it was very emotional. As a dog lover, I remember Daniel, I was texting you
Oh,
like I'm crying literally like every other sentence.
yeah, I
yeah.
spoiled. I'm like, no, no, radar is okay. Radar is
I
okay.
immediately, that was the first thing I looked up because I was like, okay, the one thing I need to know is if this dog is gonna die.
Yeah.
So
And
I
I was
immediately
I
went like,
was
I'm Googling, is the dog dead?
I was emotional and crying because Radar is a German Shepherd, and one of our friends, Jonathan, has Ada, the German Shepherd, and
Oh,
so I related a lot to her. I'm like, no, like,
I know, it was sad. So yeah, but it's spoiler, I guess, there that she does survive. Um, so the first thing I wanted to talk about was just let's talk about Charlie himself. What did you guys think of him as a main character, Daniel?
I thought he was so fucking relatable. Like Stephen King, that's one thing I like. Like he could give you 200 pages on the backstory of a character, and then like it's like most of the time it works. You don't get too angry. It's like, bitch, get to the point. But it works a lot in this case because at the end of the day, it helps me, like it helps the reader like root for Charlie in this other world when we do eventually get that on page like 300 and something. But but like I found him super relatable, and you when you get to know the backstory of the mother dying, when you get to know about the backstory with his mother passing away, his father being an alcoholic, and then, doing things around the house, helping his father, making a promise to like spiritual God that like, if his father becomes sober, that he'll like, you know, put more back into the world. So, and that's how we meet Howard Bowditch and all of that. And it's just, you know, with a character like that, uh, it's just like every teenager has that sense of like reality being shattered when you're young, when the real world creeps in. So I just dig it when it's like coming of age, but it has those dark elements in the side and in the peripheral. I just love it, especially when he disses R.L. Stein.
What about you, Mike? How did you feel about our main character?
I agree with Danny on a lot of the points that he said. Charlie was very relatable, the coming of age and um like a difficult background growing up, the mom passing away and the difficult relationship with the father that strained. I felt that that was, you know, very relatable to a lot of teenagers or kids that might pick up this book too. And it's not just, you know, cookie cutter, happy go lucky high school.
Yeah,
That's what I like, that his characters are flawed and they're dealing with emotions and with their own personal issues and demons. And um, even through that, you see, I won't spoil it yet, but the progression of Charlie through the story, he had this beautiful character arc that he became a hero, even with all the weight of what he's been through on him. So
yeah.
that resonated to me a lot.
Yeah. No, yeah, I have to agree with you guys on a lot of that. Charlie is definitely a character you root for, and I think that like I don't think there's any point that you're like not wanting him to just kind of, defy the odds almost. I did have a funny question though. What did you guys think about? Because I found it kind of odd that he kept having to kind of reference the fact that he's done bad things, and they're like these bad things that he like little by little he'll mention one thing that he did and then another thing that he did. He kind of gives us like this idea that he's supposed to have like this kind of
With
hidden,
that backstory, with that
yeah,
awful best friend that
yeah,
made
the
him
bad best
do
friend, yeah.
Oh
questionable
yeah.
things.
That he had
But
to
Yeah,
I found
steal
it
at the beginning, he had to steal something and then
right,
it,
yeah. I think that there was stealing. There was like they had called a bomb threat, I think, on a school.
yeah. Spread
yeah.
shit on a old couple's
Yeah,
car.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I found it kind of like funny that he had to keep repeating that. I don't know how did you guys feel about that? Because I felt like he was kind of wanting us to think of Charlie as like, oh, he was a bad guy like before, but now he's like a good guy. So I don't know. I felt a little bit like um I don't know. He wasn't selling
The
it for me very
the
much.
reason I didn't disconnect too much with that is that it does have a slight uh first act payoff with the Rumpelstiltskin, like, motherfucker, where's the gold? Like, when it has that, and then Charlie goes, like, he thinks I'm a goody two shoes, but he doesn't know my origins.
I know,
I,
but don't you think that like okay, so like yeah, okay, we have these like bad teenager origins. Okay, like you spread shit on somebody's car, but then like you go from that to breaking some guy's arms. It just felt a little like I just found it not it wasn't bad. It wasn't like totally unbelievable, but a bit part of me was just like, all right, Stephen King, you're
I
pushing
think
that a little bit.
the reason I liked it and I resonated with it, because at least with my life, I naturally think I'm a good person, even though sometimes I could go into that bitch mode of, like, sometimes it's that realism. And then so at least with me, that added an extra layer of like awesomeness to Charlie. And it's like, because in most fantasy stories, it's the other trope. It's the virgin character, or the character who could do no wrong, who was born on the right side of history. Like, so I kind of like it, that juxtaposition of like, because of his mother's death and his dad's alcoholism, he did have a period that he wasn't such a great kid. And then you could still be redeemed in different parts of your life, and you could grow as a person.
No, I know. I'm not negating that it's a good thing. I mean, I like the fact that Charlie has a dark side. I just found it funny
Yeah.
that he kept repeating like
Yeah.
I'm a bad guy, I swear.
I think at that age you think that those things were like the worst things in the
Yeah.
world you've always done. Like you
Yeah.
what I've done, like, yeah, you smeared shit or like, you might have bullied somebody, but it's at that age you think you're like horrible, like, oh my God, I did this.
Yeah.
But then
Um
also, what does that say about us, or me specifically, that I'm like, that's not that bad, Charlie. Like, what are you
I
sad about?
no, I thought that too. And yeah, he deserved to break his arm. Like
Exactly, right? I'm like, might as well. The guy's an asshole.
Yeah.
and also on
Um,
the breaking getting more like violent and like pushy, I think a lot of it is maybe it's the anger that Charlie was holding in that he's finally like, I'm done. Like I need to
yeah.
do this. Like you know, and he's getting older and it's pushing him to like, he had never really let it out before. So I think that was part of the coming of age as well.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was enjoyable. That's the part that I did like, is that you do get to see that. I think that's the experience that Daniel was just talking about, that we all might have enjoyed. It's just this aspect of like, this character isn't wholly wonderful or like kind or whatever, but they do end up kind of changing our minds about a bad kid and turning him into like this savior almost at the end, which is nice, because normally, like you said, Daniel, characters tend to be a little like um too innocent, right?
Two innocent goody two shoes, like the Glinda versus the Elphaba.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, I had the maintenance guy talking to me. So
No, no worries.
No, don't worry. Yeah. One thing I could say that I like how you had pockets of like bringing that up. The things that made me not uncomfortable, but I'm like, is this really necessary? Are the like the male gaze with female characters of like, oh, her breasts and her nipples, and like, or at the end that wasn't
Right, when he has that
necessary
random sex
sex
scene.
scene, like a half a paragraph sex scene. Like I can't. This is unnecessary.
I
That
mean,
those things did that. I was like,
no, I get that. I think that's just a Stephen King thing, though.
yeah,
He
Stephen King
has
has
to
a
have
weird,
something
like,
sexual at some point.
yeah, he needs. I can't.
maybe it's a teenager thing too, because like
I know, but it was just like so convenient. Like, here's this teen kid that he's gone through all this stuff, so let's just give him a hurrah at the
Yeah,
let his hormones free.
right.
yeah.
Oh, so going back to something you had said earlier, Daniel, it was actually one of my questions. How did you guys feel about the length at the beginning? Because we go through a lot with Charlie and Mr. Bowditch and his dad and his mom. Like, there's a whole world before we get to the actual thing that
Yeah,
we're
the
supposed to
real
get to.
world. Yeah.
So how did you guys feel? Like, did you stay completely connected from the beginning to the middle? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I felt connected because I was enjoying like the build up with Charlie and Mr. Bowden and everything. I'll be honest that there were a few moments where I'm like, okay, I'm on page 100 and something. What's happening? Like, where's the story? Is he gonna go down into the basement? Is he gonna like go somewhere? It's called fairy tale. Like,
Yeah.
I thought but that didn't take away the enjoyment of getting to know Charlie and Mr. Bowden, Bowditch. Uh, but yeah, there were a few moments where, okay, Steven, we're gonna have to pick this up now.
Yeah. And that's one thing that me and Heather from our like, because we've been reading him, and you too, Mike, have been reading him for decades. So it's like sometimes he's too descriptive. It's pacing issues. It's always pacing issues. We go back with him. Sometimes he needs to snip, snip, snip. But at the same time, I just love character studies. And then that's for me with the pacing issue is that the first half is what I loved more. I like the real world, the cozy vibes, the slice of life vibes. So when we get to the fairy tale, that's where it's ultimately fails for me at least. If for me to miss the real world when we're in the fantasy world, that's a bad thing, even though I still rate it 4 stars, which is because Stephen King, even as a writer, he still even hooks you in the fantasy part. Because I do like the deaf witch who's like has to scream everything. So I do like the fantasy characters and the fantasy tropes. I got into it eventually, but I was still missing going back to the real world. So pacing, it's all about pacing. I just I didn't fully have the moment that I was having with the first 200 300 pages. I didn't. And a total shift too, because we get the Rumpelstiltskin type of guy in the real world, but then when we go to the fantasy world, everybody's a little bit like cookie cutter paper, like in personality wise. Like they all stay in their heart, and the adventure is also linear in the fantasy world. And then, of course, we're going to talk later about the third act is also, Mad Max Thunderdome. It's a competition. So that third act did take me away a lot with like the Skeletor looking like soldiers and just like doing the trope of like the main character has to enter a competition where the evil person made it for the land to like I was like, ugh.
Okay. Well, I guess that leads us into the next question of what did we think of Empis. So, I'm gonna start and say I totally disagree with you. I actually
Do
didn't
it, girl.
miss.
Tell me,
I
tell me,
didn't miss
convince
I
me.
didn't miss the real world. I liked the fantasy world a lot. I enjoyed being there. In fact, when I think I texted you afterwards when I finished the book, I was like, I'm gonna miss everybody there. I really like the fantasy world personally. I had a lot of fun with it. There is that section you're talking about, like a weird Thunderdome section, but like it was very mild to me in comparison. Like once we got out of there, at the beginning I was in, then I kind of lost it there, but then once we left there, I was back into it. So I personally didn't find it that like unenjoyable. I thought that it was a pretty fun place to be. And just in the sense of like what we know of like fairy tale stories and stuff like that, seeing some of those tropes and some of those characters in that world and kind of experiencing that through Stephen King's eyes is really cool because I like how he kind of turns like whatever fairy tale we have is already kind of dark and then he kind of just makes it even darker, which I thought was really cool. But so yeah, so I'm gonna have to say I'm a little bit opposite there. What about you, Mike? How did you feel about Empis and in general?
I'm kind of in a mix in between both of your opinions, but I loved being in the fantasy world because to me it's like the dark fantasy, the mystery of like, why do these people have no faces? What's going on? Like, and then he's exploring the town little by little, goes into the creepy town, the creepy castle. I was all in. I was engaged throughout. Like, I loved being in that world and that adventure, like walking along with Charlie and Radar doing that. So that didn't take me out of it. Um, the whole competition thing, yeah, a little bit. It was like, okay, we've seen this in Hunger Games and a lot of other kind of books with Charlie around Charlie's age too. But once we were out of there, then it's back to like, okay, we have to, the princess is supposed to like cure everybody and save everybody. So I was all in. Even though it was a trope, it didn't feel like a trope to me because again, the character development and you feel for these characters and you're in with them. So it felt like we were going along with them. Like it felt a little familiar, but a good familiar. Like, okay, I love this. Like it's fun.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I still disagree.
no, I mean it's fine. I mean it is what
Well,
it
you know
is.
where you could take your disagreement. No, okay.
No, but
um,
to talk a little bit more about
mhm.
my point with the like why I guess the beginning I was reading it slower. I was loving the slice of life vibes, was loving the backstory, loving Mr. Bowditch, and then the mystery of what's underground, and then with the giant roaches, and then with that killer Rumpelstiltskin guy wanting all that gold, and like, I thought it was gonna be much darker. Then when we get to the world, it's like linear, and then it's like info dump of all the fantasy rules. So it's like Dora the shoemaker, Leia the princess that can't speak well because she's like silenced, and then every location we go, it's like the castles at the end. It felt like a storybook.
But
I
wouldn't you
just
say that was the point?
I think he was going for, wasn't he going for like metaphors of like our reality in a way? That's how I was interpreting it. Like the deaf, the deaf guy at the beginning, and then the can't speak. I thought he was doing like some metaphors um as we were going through it.
I mean,
Um
I just thought it was I fit the fairy tale theme. I mean, that's kind of how it works in fairy tales. So I
yeah,
don't know. I didn't.
fairy tales take reality and they make it.
you know where I think I may mess up mentally is that sometimes with just fairy tale is the trope of like storybooks. I was thinking more fantasy,
Mhm.
so I wanted him to blow up fantasy wise.
Yeah,
I want to be like open world and not so like linear in video game
yeah, yeah.
terminology. So like when it was too like cookie cutter with the tropes, it's just like, even though I do like the ending part where it was a little existential slash metaphysical with like the tower and then the creature at the end and the princess defeating her, and then it's like astrological, like it looked like a boss battle. It turned very video gamey at the
Yeah,
end.
I did.
It
I
did turn
really
very
did.
video game, and that's where like I'm like, ooh, this would have been really cool from like the start, like some batshit crazy fantasy. So
I guess, but I guess I didn't go into it thinking about fantasy. I was thinking fairy tale. I figured it was gonna
Yeah.
be like a with the title fairy tale. I figured it was
yeah,
gonna
that's
be about
totally obvious.
like I
Yeah.
Yeah.
think it fit. Like I think I had told you this too that I personally like that old Disney magic of like the older movies and stuff. I felt like it kind of followed that line of going and like
Yeah.
I personally enjoy that a lot because obviously well for me I used to like Disney movies a lot as a kid. So I think it kind of followed the that way for me and I that's why I liked it because I was thinking of those like old school like the Prince Charming and all that stuff but but
I think that's
obviously like huh
oh, sorry. No,
go
I
ahead, go ahead.
think that's what he was going for since he called it like fairy tale, like
Right.
what we usually think, and he's going through it with his little, horror-esque kind of
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah,
pretty much what I figured he was gonna do
like
from
a
the beginning.
Brothers Grimm type
Yeah. But
interpretation,
and I
taking
think
fairy
that he
tales back to
actually
darkness.
Mhm.
yeah, and I think he actually kind of did it for me anyways. I liked where he took a lot of like the characters, especially how he kind of morphed them away from what we already know as grim stories and he kind of made them a little bit worse and I liked
Yeah.
it. I thought he did a good job there. But but yeah, I can't say that that middle part with the fighting was definitely like a low point for me. I
And
didn't
all
super
the
enjoy that.
origin and then all the origin info dump of like the princess, her backstory, the brothers and the sisters and the curse and it was all
I didn't dislike that. I don't know.
I thought it
We're on
was
two different wavelengths
I
here.
thought it was thrown so much in that section. I'm like, this is exposition. This is but
I liked it, but I
I
don't know.
like
I like
it.
that kind of storytelling personally. What are you
and
saying,
do
Mike?
you go ahead, Mike?
Oh, no, I
I
agree
like
with him because I liked it. Like you meet this new character and you get new information, and then you meet the other character and it builds on it.
yeah,
And so,
like you get like these
yeah,
little snippets of what's happening. I don't know. I liked it. It's funny though. I mean, it's nice to see that those scenes could mean, can affect two people differently. So,
Yeah.
just in general, I guess since we've already kind of talked about it a little bit, um, give me any like favorite characters or maybe favorite scenes that you want to talk about. Anything that really like you enjoyed and stood out to you.
Me, it's mostly just the beginning with Mr. Bowditch, and then how he would steal gold from this fairyland and then bring it to the real world, and then with the turn dial, he would just use it. That was like kind of pretty interesting, and like he just like he didn't flounder, like he just floundered. He didn't like really like live in the fantasy. And then you get to see pieces of him in that world where he gives like the witch a sewing machine
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So it's I kind of like that. And then I did like out of all like the future characters, I do like the shoemaker. She was the
Yeah.
most Disney one.
She was the most Disney.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was the most Disney with the like shoes and like
I love her too. Yeah.
yeah, and her language and the way she like loves radar and stuff
Yes,
like
and the
that.
way she loves everybody. She was a super like just overprotective mama bear kind of character. It was really sweet.
But
she
yeah, but
reminded me
all
of Queena from Final Fantasy 9. A little.
yes, yes, especially with the language, with the muted language of like where they could only say a few words.
Mhm.
Yeah, but ultimately, Charlie is my favorite, and then Dora's like oh, and then I did say the witch at the end. I forgot her name, the one that has to yell everything because she's like deaf.
Claudia.
Claudia.
Wasn't
I
she
love
right?
Claudia. She
Wasn't
was
she creepy
hysterical.
riding like a unicycle? I think she rode like a unicycle or
What
something.
did she? I don't
Yes,
remember
Yeah.
that. That's
because to me
funny.
she was like an interpretation of Elphaba, kind of. That's how I imagined her in my mind.
Yeah,
I
wearing all
loved her.
black, like a little unicycle, like she's creepy at the beginning. Until you get to know her.
And no, and
Yeah.
then I also love it that she bitches at the characters at
Yeah.
the end.
She's got
She's like,
attitude.
she's like with the princess. She's like, you better go over there. That's your brother. You better kill him. Like, oh, you better
She's
do your
very
duty.
sassy. That's so funny.
Yeah, I
What about you,
guess.
Mike?
To me, some of the high points were getting to know Charlie at the beginning with Mr. Bowden. Um, their whole relationship, like this cranky old man, but then he has a heart of gold. Like,
Yeah.
and then when he died, it killed me. I'm like, no. Um, Another high point for me was when Charlie has to put radar on the time turner tape. Oh, like, oh my God, that was so epic. Because then it turns into Charlie's like race to like, I don't care anymore like about this fantasy world, but if this thing works, I'm gonna trust the fantasy world, and that's where he goes all in. Like, this place is weird, but I'm gonna believe in it. And then his belief like leads him to save his dog, which I thought was genius. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, uh, the battle in the middle, eh. But then at the end with the princess and the creature, it was like very, very video game. So those
Yeah.
kind of stand out to me. But all the characters had their own personality, their own voice, and they all changed a little bit. Even though they were
By the
cookie
end,
cutter,
yeah.
they still interacted with each other and made the world it was. Um, but yeah, Radar is my favorite.
Yes, I was just about to say that. My favorite, of course, was Radar. I loved Radar, but I think that definitely more than anything, I just enjoyed watching Charlie and Radar kind of become like a unit almost. Like
Yeah.
they're like best friends, like towards the middle, and you're just like rooting for Charlie to take care of Radar and just like make sure she survives. I teared up so many times in this
I
freaking book.
was literally gonna put the book down if she died. I'm like done, even though it's
I
not.
know. That's why I had to look it up because I was like, I'm not gonna finish this if she dies.
No,
I will die with her.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that whole relationship. I really, because for me, it connected a lot just because I do have my own dogs, and that's exactly how I feel about them. Like, if I could take them to a magical place that would give them like extended life, I would totally take them like right now.
yeah,
So
and
it
I
was
love how
really
Charlie
sweet.
didn't even use it for himself or anything. He used it
Right.
for her. Like,
It
I
was his
love it that he
dog.
was very selfless. Yeah, that he was very selfless with that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
his relationship with Mr. Bowditch was actually really cool too. I did like that whole like grumpy guy with like the young kid, and then just kind of becoming friends towards the end.
Yeah.
And yeah, the ending definitely I enjoyed too. I always love when everybody gets together to fight the bad guy. That's my favorite part in any story. So like that trope was great. I love that everybody went in like we're all gonna follow you, Charlie, and we're all gonna do this together. And then like some characters pass away that you're like, oh, it's sad that they died and whatever. That is just like it was just a lot of fun. It was just like that back to that old kind of just like fairy tale story. I don't know. I really enjoyed a lot of parts in the book. And Daniel, I was gonna ask you this, but I think we talked about it a little bit. Anything that you guys disliked, any tropes that you felt were just like, I don't really like, I don't vibe with this, anything like that. I think we touched on it a little bit. If there's anything else you wanted to add to that question.
No, just that the beginning has like a more centered story with like fewer characters. So when you're thrown into the fantasy world, it's a little more faster pace and info dumpy and a bunch of more characters that I guess it did lose me slightly, but not that bad because I still wanted to read every single night. And I was still like, okay, we're going to the next house. We're going to the next house now, but then the Thunderdome comes, and then that's where it loses me again. And then I guess kind of like, when you have the dark elements of the story, but then it has the simplistic elements of like, these bodyguards that have been, guarding them and, causing them to fight. They die with water being poured on them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they were never like by accident kill one with water. Like it's like
Yeah, that is an interesting thing to bring up. You're right about that.
yeah.
I thought maybe it just had to do with the fact that they were all being affected by whatever it was affecting everybody. And so it just kind of like I thought it was just like a snowball kind of effect where, people when bad things start to happen, some people just kind of let it happen, and they
Yeah.
don't they
And
don't make
it's
strides to change things.
and then there was an interesting point in the Thunderdome section, which I don't know if you guys interpret it that way, is that um some of the characters there, you don't know if they're from the actual fantasy world or they're maybe from other sections of the world that they entered the portal to go into this fantasy world. And that's an interesting thing, but it never leads anywhere, especially with Charlie's ending of closing up his hole to that fantasy world. But then I wonder, did other people go in? Is there other dimensional whole rabbit holes like that go to there.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I think that there might have been. I think I can see where you might have had like hints of it. I thought for me that they just came from like different cities in the
Yes,
world, but I didn't really like. He didn't
yes,
go too much into it.
but then at the same time too, there's the magical clause of the more you're in the fantasy world, the more
Yeah,
you
you said to
become
kind of
it.
like become one of them.
You
Yeah.
become it, like like a cartoon, a human going into a cartoon, but if he doesn't get out, he'll just stay a cartoon
Yeah,
forever.
yeah. No, it's an interesting
Yeah.
theory. It's very possible that some of the people kind of got stuck there. I think that's
Yeah, so
plausible.
that,
Yeah.
and I was like, ooh, go to that thread, but we never got that thread.
Yeah.
But
I
I
mean,
did.
I personally wasn't really like I don't think that I cared too much about it. I wasn't like I don't think I was thinking about it. In fact,
Yeah, it's
until you said it now, I wasn't thinking about that at all. But I can see it. I can see what you're talking about. I think, yeah, like I don't know, Mike, maybe you agree here, or maybe you have another section that you didn't particularly like. But I think for me, the only section I didn't like was that weird like Thunderdome section. It's funny we keep calling it that, but essentially it's just all these characters get together, they're stuck in a jail cell, and now they're made to like fight each other, and you've got men and women, and it's just like a whole thing. And I felt it just like dragged on way too long.
yeah.
Like, oh, all
I
right,
know
let's get through
it
this.
has an actual like literary term name, but
Yeah,
I
I don't
don't.
remember. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
I don't even remember what the point was. Like, why did they need them to fight again? Like to have a champion? Like, but why? I forgot. Like,
And then also, talking of you guys' favorite character with Radar, that whole section is Radar-less.
Yes,
So
radar
yeah,
disappears on us. But then again, I part of me and part of me liked that because I was already so stressed out about what was gonna happen to radar.
yeah.
And I
We
was like,
you're
needed a
so
okay,
break.
cute,
a
Mama.
reprieve. I
You're
don't have
so
to worry
cute.
about her anymore.
Yeah. But then the payoff was when he reunited with her. I love that scene. Like,
Because there's a section where he has like a dream and she's like crying because she can't find him. Oh my god, just thinking about it makes me want to cry. I
Yeah.
hated those scenes. So when like they reunite, she's so excited to see him. Oh my god. Because I like I was saying like my dogs, whenever I come home, immediately it's just like I have two little like lovebirds, just like, oh my god, you're home, you're home, you're home. So I can
oh,
immediately envision like that scene of them getting together after being apart. It was just so sweet. I really love that part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does have that payoff. But yeah, it was a little like it does drag on a little bit.
No,
Um,
and we haven't even talked about like the monsters and like the fate of Ariel, the little mermaid. Like
yeah,
there's
I
a
know, right?
that second half has a
There was a lot.
lot.
Yeah, there was a lot happening. I mean, he I think that's definitely one thing that I really like about Stephen King is that even though he does tend to like go overboard with telling us about the world he's kind of envisioned in his mind, it's so like it's interesting and it's expansive. Like I'm surprised at how like I want to be inside his head. Like what's happening in there? Because there's a lot going on. I
Yeah,
think in
those
every book
gears.
it's just a lot going on.
Yeah,
yeah. He's very
exactly.
good at world building. Like,
Yeah.
you think it's like confined to this little house where he meets the shoemaker and like, okay, this is cute, but then it's like this whole epic, fate of the princess and her brother, and like, oh, okay.
Right. And then all these characters that have different backgrounds. I mean, you've got Mr. Bowditch, you have Charlie, you have his dad going through his dad has his whole own little story that he goes through. It's small and it's not super important, but it's interesting, right? Like he's an alcoholic and he kind of changes for his son's life. And it's just like all of these little side characters have these big backstories. Even like that neighbor lady who like
La
was always spying
Chimosa.
on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you end up finding out that she has like a husband and like a whole life. I just find it so fascinating that he has all these characters are like almost like real people, and it's like so cool sometimes to think about that
Yeah.
when he writes books. Like he does that, I think, in every book, and I think that's pretty amazing, personally.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
you reminded me of, sorry,
no,
Okay.
go ahead, Pops. You reminded
that
me of what?
that beautiful part that, yeah, when Charlie comes home, he's like, I've been looking for you, his dad, I've been looking for you and everything, and I stopped drinking, and and they reconcile. That was nice. Like,
Yeah, I'm super happy. It was only 3 months he was gone. I was so scared he was going to go back into the real world, and it's been like 30 years.
I
I
was
was
a
like,
little worried about that too. Yeah,
I
Right.
was like,
And
oh my
then the
God.
dad would have been dead by then. And like,
I
no, don't do
know.
that. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I was happy the ending tied it, like tied
Yeah.
it, and I did like that choice. It was a good ending. Like him and his dad just seal that portal,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did like
and
that too. I thought that was great that they sealed it off
and
and
he
like,
decided not to turn dial radar a second time.
yeah.
Right. To
Well, a
let
third
him
time.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, we kind of get the idea that she just grows old with him, and I think that's really nice too to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess in that sense, because we'll go on forever, I think there's just so much. So just give me all your overall feelings about the books. Do you recommend it to other people? Do you think other people should pick it up? And just general thoughts about everything.
And then so I know you said it before, Danny, but this was my first Stephen King book that I read.
Oh, I thought you would have
Ooh.
read
Like I read,
more. I just
yeah,
assume everybody at least over 30 like has read
yeah.
more like more
Well, I
Stephen King.
mean, I've seen a lot of the movies and
The
everything.
adaptions, yeah.
I've always been scared to like pick up a book because I know he's intense and it'll get in my head. Um, so I wanted to check this out. It was like, leading into him, but um, I love his style. Yeah, the descriptions were a little long, but the character development and the building, it makes me excited to read more of his stuff.
No,
Yeah,
yes, he still gets you because like I said, he's still the king of writing. Like it's
yeah,
like even his mediocre things are still leagues above like a normal book. Like not
yeah.
to be mean to like he's a master
Yeah.
of the
But,
craft.
but as a newbie to Stephen King, then yes, I would recommend this book, definitely.
How
Uh,
about how about you, Heather? What is your like because I'm assuming everybody. What is your like history, Stephen King history really quick?
I think I've read a lot of his popular stuff. I haven't read a lot of it. Like I know I haven't read Cujo. I haven't read like some of like the important ones. I know I haven't read like Shawshank Redemption. I've only watched the movie. The Green Mile. I've only watched the movie. I've read Misery. I've read Carrie. I've read Pet Cemetery. I've read what else did I've read a bunch of them. And then
Yeah.
I've read a lot of his short stories too. I
I
personally for
love his
me,
short story
yeah,
collections.
personally for me, I'm a Stephen King fan. Even
Yeah,
even his stuff that I don't like, I'm still like, I'll still pick up another Stephen King book. I'm not gonna not pick it up.
my history is similar. I go through some of his eras, like his original era. I've done Pet Cemetery and I've done The Shining.
Shining, yeah,
And
that
then
one
I
too.
and then I did like Everything's Eventual, which is the short story
Short
collection. I
stories.
really loved him in short story 1408, Room 1408, and all of that.
Yeah.
So, and then I do love his middle era too, because his middle era is where I started to ramp up because I was a teenager at the time, you know. So, during high school and college, it was like The Cell, Under the Dome, Lisey's story. I started to get into that era. I have more books in that era. And then, so with Fairy Tale, it's this like third era because he's been writing for like 3 to 4 decades. So it's like fun to see like he has eras.
And he
So,
still has so many ideas. It's
yeah, I
insane.
know it's insane. So yeah, he's a master, and it's just I I overall I highly recommend Stephen King. You can recommend to anybody. It's like such anybody.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I mean, personally, yes, I would recommend Fairy Tale, especially if you like that, like kind of classic Disney magic. I think if you like that, you'll like Fairy Tale a lot. I would say, like, yeah, like hold off on thinking it's about fantasy because I don't think it really dives into that. It definitely sits on the whole fairy tale,
Like old
the
school
Brothers
Brothers
Grimm, yeah,
Grimm.
very old school
Yeah.
fairy tales. But if you do like that kind of stuff, you'll enjoy the book a lot. I personally think because I had fun with it. Um, yeah, I think I recommend it for anybody, honestly. And yeah, like you said, Stephen King, personally, I just recommend him in general. I think anybody, whatever book calls to you, pick it up and read it because it's probably pretty good.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about you, Daniel? Do you
Me,
recommend it?
oh yeah, no, I super recommend it. And especially like if it's you only have to read one book a year as a newcomer type reader. And this one, it'll have you for the whole year that you could do the 700 pages, like little by little through the months, you know? Because a
He
lot of
doesn't
people
write
could get,
short books.
yeah, he doesn't really write short
Well, his
books.
short stories,
Or should-
they're pretty good for what they are, short stories, and they're short. So if you do want to like read not
Dabble
so
in.
heavy things, but you still want to read Stephen King, his short stories are definitely the way to go.
Yeah. Even though for me, he's like the only writer that I never get scared of length. And I used to be really scared of length of books. Like I'm like, no, the time commitment. But him, the flow of everything, it's just you don't feel it. You don't feel it. You
Yeah.
don't feel it.
Yeah, there's definitely like, I mean, I will say there's moments you do kind of are like, all right, Steven, let's move on. But it's very rare. A lot of the time you end up going like, okay, like let's go on because I want to know what's gonna happen. And I think that's the important part is that you want to know what happens.
Yeah, you're
Exactly.
It keeps
yeah,
you
like
there.
in Fairy
You're
Tale, I was enjoying the slow pace at the beginning, but then I wanted to know what would happen, but not in a bad way. It was like, I love this, but okay, what's next?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly. I think that's probably definitely true for most of Stephen King. Speaking of which, if you could recommend another Stephen King book, which one would you recommend,
oh,
Daniel?
tell me because I would love to try another one. Yep.
Yeah, because for me
Ooh, from
personally, I would do Misery. I would tell you to read Misery. That was one of my favorites. One of the first ones I read, one of my favorites in comparison to all his other ones because it is so visceral. You
it
feel
is.
everything. It's so
Oh, wow.
good. Read it definitely. I would say
Yeah.
Misery.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was interested in maybe the Dark Tower series, but I
That
don't know if
one,
I've
my
heard
husband
much.
likes that one. He really enjoys those a lot.
Yeah, but that one scares me as in the sense of like, where do you start? What
Yeah,
book
it's like
is
a
it?
whole
Right.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like a cinematic, like it's like the MCU. Like you don't know where to
Oh,
Yeah.
start. Yeah, it's like, but you could do that if you want to.
Yeah, my husband does like those though, so I would say he would recommend those. Yeah. What about you, Daniel?
I think for Mike, because remember that I curate. I'm pretty good at that. That I curate
oh,
to the person and their like likes and
well,
dislikes and like
I'm on the second book that you told me this month, so
yeah. So exactly. So me, I do that. I like curate books. So at least for Mike, I think 11/22 1963 would be a good one because that's like a human story um
wait, I have to write that
with
down.
a historical fiction. So it's like a guy goes into the time machine to try to stop JFK's assassination.
Oh, they did a show about that.
Yes,
No,
don't
I didn't
do
see
the
the show. I didn't see the
oh,
show.
you see? So yeah, that's the first thing I would do with a reader who's interested in Stephen King. First, I'll be like, what adaptations did you see? Tell me a little bit, like, because I like to recommend something you haven't seen.
Because his
Like,
adaptions are hit or miss.
yes,
But
exactly. But no, but for example, Heather with Misery, it is a great adaptation. I will admit, though, it is a great adaptation in that case. But the book is still like leagues
Above.
great, like leagues above as well.
Yeah.
Even
It's because
even
of the
with
way, like, imagine the how descriptive he is, and now imagine pain. And he's describing pain, like you're literally feeling everything that happens to
oh
this
no.
character. It is, but in a good way. Like you're like, damn, this is really good. I found it super
yeah,
interesting.
if you haven't seen
So
Misery, it's because my assumption, I'm thinking you saw the adaptation with Kathy Bates, Misery.
I
So
heard of
I'm
it,
like,
but I never sat
oh,
through it.
then you never seen it? Okay,
so
then
the story is
Heather's
about
recommendation is perfect.
yeah,
Okay,
so
because
the
I was
story is
terrified of
about
the movie as a kid, so I didn't want.
that's
Oh,
funny. Well, the story is about a writer essentially, and she ends up kind of holding him hostage because she wants him to finish the book. And that's pretty much the story. And it's just so good because Misery, like the main character, and then the lady, I forget her name. I always forget her name, but she is just like so. You both feel sorry for her, and you're also like, damn, that's one evil bitch. She's such a good character. I just one of my favorite books for sure. So if you haven't watched the movie yet, definitely read it first, and then maybe give it a watch. Kathy Bates, amazing. She's perfect.
well, did she win the Oscar for that? I don't
I don't
remember.
remember, but she was perfect in it for me. So
Yeah,
I think that's the
but yeah.
movie that put her like as A-list actor. That movie.
it wouldn't be surprising because she was phenomenal in that movie. Oh man, it was so good. But yeah,
So,
he definitely does have here hit and miss movies. I find that his horror doesn't work as well as like his more like real world stuff.
Yeah,
'Cause
like
you have like your
Green
Shawshank
Mile, The
Redemption. Yeah,
Stand.
yeah.
Yeah,
Like they have elements of the real world
Stand By
more than
Me.
anything. So like I feel like those do better than when he does his horror stories. I feel like his horror stories just come off better in the books. I don't know why.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I totally agree. 7,000%.
But yeah.
But yeah, you
But
have 2 recommendations, Mike.
and for anybody else who maybe wants to pick those up. But yeah, guys, I think this is gonna be it. That's the end of our little review for Fairy Tale. Michael, how did you feel joining us for the first time?
This is fun. This is
Are you
fun.
gonna come back? Are you gonna read more books with us?
I think I will. Yeah, this is fun.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm in.
And go ahead, go ahead.
No, I said I'm in.
Yes. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so our next book, exciting, is going to be a nonfiction. We're going to be reading Michelle Obama's Becoming. I have it through my library. Daniel has the actual book. And yeah, hopefully you guys join us for that one. Pick it up if
Nonfiction
you
November.
can. And we will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
Bye, everybody.